said that it is, look, the only way to come to a conclusion, an answer to that question, is to analyze history and the future trends by thinking about the dynamics of rent. That's the tool, the concept that begins to open up the future. In my next book, I'm sorry to have to mention this, I do begin to explore these issues in more detail. We don't have the time to go into satisfying Fernando with a full answer to his question. But just remember this, the First World War wasn't going to happen, and then one madman shot an archduke and the world was at war. It was as simple as that. But it wasn't the one bullet that killed one man that created the World War. This was just the trigger, the event that provoked what was going to happen anyway. So if my analysis is correct, it's going to happen anyway. It doesn't matter what the bullet is, which gun, who fires it. It could be North Korea. It could be one of the Middle Eastern countries with a rocket that went wrong that landed in Washington. Who knows what it will be? We don't, but it doesn't matter. The important thing is, are the social and economic conditions today so fragile, are the stresses in the system so ready to cause the whole structure to collapse that it only takes an accident, one madman, one ship colliding with another ship in the wrong sea? The answer is, look, I don't think the World War will be like the last two. It won't be fought with conventional weapons. It doesn't need to be. China could destroy half of the United States by using cyberspace weapons. They only have to stop the energy system working throughout the grid, the power grid in America. All the computers would collapse, the heatings would be turned off, traffic would be stuck in the cities. The war is over. What happens then? See, we're talking about the future, and this is where the Hollywood imagination is more likely to tell us what is going to happen in the future than someone like me looking in the history books. But the key thing is, where are the stresses in the system? And they relate to the concept of rent and the way that this fight over this income is causing the collisions. And those collisions are happening all over the world, just like the earthquakes that send tidal waves over Japan and destroy whole regions. It's like that. And unless we begin to think about it and make a credible case, because you have to be responsible if you're talking about these issues. Otherwise you are treated as an idiot, a madman. But somebody has to start thinking about it, because it's too late when we're down the road of... We've got so many young people unemployed in Spain, Ireland, Greece. Why don't we make them join the army? Why don't we start building naval ships? We need naval ships down in the Falkland Islands. Let's start rebuilding our navy. Once we start to do that kind of thing, we are too far down the road, and we have to stop it getting that far. That means people like you have to begin thinking about it, because we won't be able to do it by ourselves. So I'm sorry that I can't answer Fernando's question sensibly, but I'm sure that pretty soon a clear answer will be presented to him, and that will give him a lot of sleepless nights. I guess the question is, should we be thinking about utopian solutions or being practical? We are not. Those of us who advocate a change to the tax system are not utopians. The problem with the big thinkers in the past, the utopian thinkers like Thomas More, Plato, and the others, is that they thought that the solution was, this is an evil world, let's go and create a heaven on this island in the ocean over there, a mythical place. And they constructed this heaven on earth on their little island, as if they were not living in the real world, and we can't do that. We have to start from where we are today in towns like this one and start changing things so that everybody gains. So escaping into the... there's a very interesting answer to that question, if I've got a second. During the late Roman period, a lot of people did exactly as my friend said. They dropped out. They went away from the cities and they lived in the countryside. They became the Amorites, if I'm not mistaken. And out of that movement grew what then became the monastic life. The monks and the nuns lived in seclusion in the countryside, doing service to the people. So while the Roman civilization was collapsing, within that very civilization there were the seeds of the future civilization, because those people became the learned people. They studied, they thought philosophy, they helped their local communities. So what looked like an escape into unreality, escaping out of the urban civilization of Rome, which was so rotten, came something good. But I would rather that didn't happen to our civilization. I would rather our cities started to change from within.
My first remark is the following. When you study history and see wars, no significant war has been equal to the one preceding it. We cannot really foresee how this new war may be. We can do or make a great effort to foresee it, but we can't. My idea is the following. It is not worthwhile wasting so much energy to imagine how this new war would be, stemming from the fact that, as you, Fred Harrison, has said, from the fact that we're not having a war tomorrow or in 5 years' time, maybe in 20 years' time, but you, Fred, have shown us facts that are true, and we have to correct these issues. So maybe we should be concerned about correcting the actual situation, taking remedial action. How can we change the seeds with which we are sowing the current world and seed a new world? Here at the School of Law of the University of Buenos Aires, we can start sowing the new seeds of hope. Our school is different from many other schools of law. I am a professor of law. I'm interested in economics. Training the intelligentsia that should be making contact with governments and politicians so as to persuade them of this need, to find remedial and corrective action is very important. So this is the reason why I think that academia is very important. But what is happening at universities, higher education? Here at the School of Law, there is no single subject in the curriculum, graduate or postgraduate, where we study this topic, land value capture, or the concept of land. But I went to Mexico and to the USA, and I have noticed that the same thing happens there. No university or academic curricula includes the concept of land and everything we have been discussing. This is very important, in my opinion. I think that if we continue under such stress, we are going to have a third war, but experiences we have had before wars have shown us that dictatorships, tyranny, coup d'etats have been reiterating in the course of history once and again, and especially in the 20th century. The 20th century is an epitome of authoritarian regimes that thought that they were able to correct the situation. Fred, I fully agree with you. Politicians and governments have not lived up to expectations. They are not able or qualified enough to put in place such measures because, of course, there's universal voting. Anyone can choose the members of government. So in my opinion, academic training, education, higher education is of the essence. The contemporary world is a world where actors and players are states. The states are in the hands of people having economic notions and conceptions that are absolutely alien to land and land value capture. And legal experts and jurists and law specialists just make laws but do not have no ideas. In Argentina, between 1862 and 1910, reached its peak summit in the field of economic development, immigration streams. You can see the buildings that we have put up in Buenos Aires. But somebody has to wonder about the number of laws that were enacted. 262, only 260 laws, including resolutions by the central bank and resolutions by the Ministry of Economy. But in the 20th century, Argentina entered a period of decline. So I have seen that ever since 1930 up until the year 2000, we in Argentina enacted 25,000 laws. This is legislative inflation. Ignorance of the law, absolute ignorance of the law about what is true and false, what is right and wrong. This is a new field of action. If I am still here teaching, I am a retired professor, it's because I think that we have to educate the people, because otherwise, Fred, my dear Fred, here, people living in slums think exactly as the richest capitalist. They are always speculating. As you very well said, Fred, this is the predator culture. And how can we correct this predator culture? Education is a gate, a door to correcting. The other door is violence. Let's go down to brass tacks. Let's teach the sovereign people.
The academic world needs to be revolutionized as much as the political world, the media, all levels of our life. And what you've heard from Dr. Sandler demonstrates the chaotic nature of our political and social system. We are told we must conform to the rule of law, as if this was a sacred idea. And it's one way to intimidate people to conform to the norms of society. But no one asks, whose rule of law are you asking us to conform to? And it's the teachers like Dr. Sandler who can say, well, there are bodies of thought, philosophies, ideas of natural law that are superior to the positive laws that are passed by governments, but we need to recover that knowledge, that wisdom, the ancient wisdom, and help people to understand. And how do we do that? It's a big problem, but you're filming this event. This is valuable tool for reaching people. If you use this material on YouTube, for example, you get a lot of people to begin to think about maybe there are serious questions they should be asking themselves.
Una última pregunta para realizar.
Buenas noches. Hola, hola. Buenas noches. Ezequiel de Freijo, yo soy contador público y economista. Y un poco, digamos, en la línea de la pregunta anterior, no solo la cultura, me parece también el tema de la ética, ¿no? De la ética en los funcionarios públicos, sobre todo, digamos, en los políticos también. La pregunta era cuál era el rol que podía haber en la religión para modificar esas conductas que usted estaba mostrando que, digamos, era lo que estaba debilitando el capitalismo de avaricia. ¿Cómo lo ve eso? ¿Qué experiencias tiene respecto de eso?
This is a difficult question because in the secular age, people don't want religion or the ethics that come from the spiritual life to be part of the agenda. So the scientists, the most distinguished scientists in the world, say that we can solve the problem of what it means to be human by ignoring metaphysics, ignoring spiritual issues. Well, you're asking me, do I think that's possible? And the answer is no. The scientific community is part of our problem. They see, they define what it is to be human in such a narrow way that they are leaving out large parts of what it means to be human. And people, even those who claim to not believe in God, for example, still retain something of the spiritual in them. Now, what is that, and how would it motivate change? We need to explore these questions. On the to illustrate the scale of the problem, to come back to Dr. Sandler's question about academic life, the scale of the problem in the United Kingdom, in the economic departments of our universities, there is only one man who would understand what we're talking about, who is a professor. One man in all of the universities in Britain who has any idea of the essence, the nature of the problem, and he happens to be sitting here today. In the whole of our university in the United Kingdom, he's the only one who can talk to you about these issues and make sense of the dynamics of the economy. Isn't that a profound disgrace that we have only one man in Britain that we can draw on to talk about what he's talked about and write about it? This shows you the scale of the challenge we face in trying to educate future generations. And it's the same in the spiritual life. We hear nothing from our religious leaders about Leviticus chapter 25, which tells people, look, we have to share the land. We have to cancel debts. We have to restore the land to the people who lost it. It's a simple message. It's in the Bible, and the spiritual leaders are not teaching it. So how can we rely on them to develop ethics in the way that would then shape economics? We are in a huge mess. And that's why I feel so pessimistic. And I just have to hope that there are enough people willing to occupy the public spaces, as some of them are now doing in Europe and North America, who are saying we just won't accept anymore what's being done to us. We're going to sit in these public spaces and we're going to talk and talk and talk until we find some answers. But we need that all over the world, and we need a lot more of it. And we need people like you to be doing that, because otherwise the politicians won't listen.